There's a number in South Africa that appears again and again. It shows up in audit reports, it shows up in court records, and sometimes in service delivery protests. It's not always the same, but the pattern never changes. Billions. Billions go missing, and almost no one ever goes to jail. According to the Auditor General, most government departments repeatedly fail to account for how public money is spent year after year. Irregular expenditures, fruitless expenditures, unauthorized expenditure, different names, same outcome. But there's this part that we don't talk about enough. Not all corruption makes someone rich. Sometimes it just makes everyone poorer. So far in this series, we've looked at how political appointments damage public service. We've looked at how power operates beyond the elections. And we've also looked at why broken systems don't break equally. Today, we're talking about a form of corruption that hardly ever trends, but does cause enormous harm. This episode asks, what happens when failure is protected instead of punished? And why should voters care even when no money appears to be stolen? Think about the last corruption scandal you remember. It probably involved a leaked document, a large sum of money, and maybe a powerful name. That's how corruption usually enters public imagination. But public conversations about corruption tend to focus on criminal intent, illicit enrichments, and high-profile scandals. That focus matters, but it also creates a blind spot because it quietly suggests that if no one is stealing, the system must be clean. In reality, systems can be deeply corrupt, even when everything looks legit on paper. Now, sometimes corruption doesn't look like theft. It can look like a desk that shouldn't be occupied by someone who shouldn't be there, making decisions they were never equipped to make. Let's be clear, corruption isn't only about money exchanging hands. Sometimes corruption looks like a system that repeatedly harms the public, and no one who is actually responsible is held to account. In 2025, for instance, the Department of Social Development faced public scrutiny after a 22-year-old with limited relevant experience was appointed Chief of Staff. This is a senior role with significant responsibility and a salary of around 1.4 million rand a year. Internal warnings were reportedly raised that she did not meet the required qualifications or experience. Now, bypassing that raises serious questions about whether merit still is the standard. And then there's no dismissals. There's no public accountability for who authorized this decision. No systemic correction. In this case, the official eventually resigned, but only after suspension on full pay and without public disciplinary findings. No accountability, no meaningful review, no reform. And when that happens, something else becomes possible. The same people fail again in new positions. The harm is absorbed by the public, and protection often comes from the political loyalty, not performance. This is not accidental. This is institutionalized irresponsibility. There are no envelopes exchanging hands, but trust drains. Capacity is weakening slowly, and the state quietly erodes. Here's how this kind of corruption survives. It doesn't shout. It explains. Failure isn't corrected, it's just justified. So then we start to hear phrases like, it's a complex system, or we hear things like, we inherited this problem, or there are historical challenges, all of which may in fact be true. But explanations without correction, that's not accountability. Over time, missed deadlines become expected. Poor performance becomes tolerated. The collapse becomes so familiar. And when nothing improves, citizens are told, at least no money was stolen. The most dangerous thing this corruption can steal isn't money, it's competence. This kind of corruption destroys something that is incredibly hard to rebuild, which is state capacity. When skilled professionals are sidelined, institutional memory disappears. Standards start to erode. The system forgets how to function. Even when funding increases, even when policies improve. This is because institutions aren't just buildings or laws. They're people, practices, and trust. Here's a simple reframing tool that us voters can use. When we are assessing leadership, let's not only ask, is there corruption? Let's also ask, is failure repeated? Are consequences enforced? Is performance measured and published? Do explanations replace action? A clean system isn't one without scandal. It's one where failure is corrected. During elections, corruption becomes a weapon. It's used to attack opponents, it's used to defend allies, and it's also used very selectively. But voters lose when corruption is treated as some kind of talking point instead of a governance problem. Because incompetence without consequences survives leadership changes, adapts to new slogans, and outlasts election cycles. In the next episode, we're going to look at who leaves when systems stop working and why the loss of skilled public servants may be one of the most dangerous consequences of all. Because when experience walks out the door, rebuilding becomes exponentially harder.